Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video, but we're going to talk about video games. We're going to talk about the video game industry. We're going to talk about Square-Enix and their quest for more money. Apparently, Square has learned that going all in on Sony is not a very wise business decision for them. They've gotten burnt on Final Fantasy XVI and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And yeah, you know, I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, this is not 1997. The install base is not there for the PS5. I mean, people are getting them now, but we had several years where nobody could even get a hold of a PS5. So why would you make all of your AAA titles, you know, Sony exclusive? It made no damn sense. I think they were hoping that more people would buy a console for Final Fantasy, but again, it's not 1997. That's not going to happen. So we're going to talk about that and kind of some of the business decisions behind it and how Square figures out whether or not a title is profitable, because they've been firing a bunch of people. They've been laying a bunch of people off. They've been selling off some of their development units. They're laying a lot of people off in the West. They're already, like, immediately after they said that they were no longer going to be exclusive to Sony, they announced that they were finally going to bring Kingdom Hearts to Steam, which is something people have been asking for a very long time. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff we're going to talk about. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Go out to Indiegogo. If you like Final Fantasy, you'll probably like Shadowbinders. We are going to reprint volumes 1 and 2, and we're also going to print volume 3 for the first time, which collects the remainder of the webcomic version of the series, as well as new pages, new artwork, new stories to finish out the book. And then everything's going to be new going forward. It's going to be all new, all different. Well, not all different, but all new Shadowbinders. If you are not familiar with the series that we publish through Clownfish Studios, again, here's your chance to pick up some copies. It is a pre-order. They're not shipping right away. We have an estimated date for this campaign, the end of the year. But check it out on Indiegogo, please. So yeah, Kingdom Hearts is coming to Steam finally after like freaking 20 years. And they announced this, again, Square announced this almost immediately. I think it was like the day after they said they were no longer going to be console exclusive, after they announced a bunch of layoffs and cutbacks. And I don't know if they're canceling games or what's going on, but they had a lot of high profile misfires. They did that Marvel game, which was a massive failure, and it led to them selling off Crystal Dynamics. They did Forspoken. That was a massive failure for them. And, you know, Final Fantasy XVI and VII Rebirth should have been money in the bank, and they weren't. And I think it's because they were console exclusive, and a lot of gamers have moved on. But this guy used to work for Square. And, you know, don't contact him. Don't go out and harass him or whatever. But I thought this was very, very interesting. Because he talks about the expectations of Square and how Square calculates whether or not a game is successful. Because IGN put an article out there saying that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy XVI, and Foamstars all failed to meet Square's numbers, their expectations. And he basically said if Square can make more money putting $100 million into the stock market than they get putting $100 million into a game, then the game has failed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, wow. They're just like, this is how they determine if a game is successful. It's not how many stands it has. It's not if social media is talking about it. It's not any of that. It's basically, would we have made more money just plowing $100 million into the stock market? And I wish companies like Disney would think about it that way. Like, is it worth spending $200 million on Strange World? Is it worth spending $250 million on the Marvels? Because you could have just put that in the stock market. Well, they might have put it in FTX. That's a whole nother thing. I don't know what happened with that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if they can do that and make more money, then they're like, yeah, the game's a failure because we need to get more of a return on investment. So this guy is Jacob Novak, who is the CEO of GenVid. And he used to work at Square-Enix Holdings, reported to the CEO. So here's what he said. He said, this is a thread on the recent Square-Enix news regarding Final Fantasy sales numbers and expectations. He said, as a reminder, I reported to 2 CEOs of Square-Enix for the better part of a decade, and I ran a subsidiary. I also correctly predicted last year that Square-Enix was going to break exclusivity. I'll note I have no confidential information that I'm basing my argument on. To start, we need to look at the decisions made on the titles under development within the lens of the 2015 to 2022 landscape, not the lens of 2023. For example, Final Fantasy XVI would have started pre-production prior to the release of 15, which was released in 2016. Yeah, part of it is these games take so long to develop that you can't pivot. Because you can be like, yeah, the market clearly does not want this kind of a game, but by the time the game comes out, they've already got like 5 years in development. So there's nothing they can really do to change. This is a pre-Fortnite era. Budgets for Final Fantasy VII Remake and into Rebirth would have been around this period too. This is important to note, and we'll get back to it. There's a misunderstanding that has been repeated for nearly a decade and a half that Square-Enix sets arbitrarily high sales requirements, then gets upset when its high sales requirements fail to be met. This was not true when I was there, and it's unlikely to be true today. Sales expectations generally come from a need to cover the cost of development plus a return on investment. Like every business venture, you have to cover your costs. You don't want to lose money. You have to cover your costs and make a profit. And that's after paying people, after paying taxes, all that stuff. If a game costs $100 million to make and it takes 5 years, then you have to beat, as an example, what the business could have returned investing $100 million into the stock market. Wow. For the 5 years prior to February 2024, the stock market averaged a rate of return of 14.5%. Yeah, it's not the case now. Investing that $100 million in the stock market would have net you a return of $201 million. So this is our return on investment baseline. So the game has to at least double its money, because if not, you're better off just plowing the money into the stock market. Can the game net a return higher than this after marketing, platform fees, and discounts are factored in? This is actually a very hard equation, though it seems simple. The $70 million or the $70 that the consumer pays only returns $49 after 30% platform fees, and the platforms will generally get a recoup on any funds spent on exclusivity, meaning until they're paid back, they will get to keep that cash. Plus, discounts start almost immediately. So it's really complicated. These AAA titles, I mean, they're freaking brutal to produce. They take forever. They cost too much, and they tie your money up for years. So you better produce something that's going to get you a return, right? Assume marketing expenses are at $50 million. Assume you're not going to get $49, but rather an average closer to $40 given discounts, returns, and other aspects. Now, let's say in the first month you sold 3 million copies with $40 net received. You need to surpass 254 million to make expectations. That's 100 million plus 101 million in ROI baseline plus 50 million in marketing. At 3 million copies with $40 per copy received, you've only made 120 million. You're far off. So you can sell millions of copies of a game and you can do some back of envelope math in your head. Again, somebody that doesn't actually work in the industry, and they're going to think, well, they're making money. This is how a lot of these lame brains on Twitter are like, well, the movie cost 200 million to make and it made 201 million at the box office. They made $1 million in profit. It's like, no, moron. This is why you work for somebody else. You clearly don't understand. Like, that movie might have to make 2 to 3 times what it actually cost to make. And that's what is actually tied to that film. There are a lot of other expenses that are kind of ethereal, right? Well, we'll just say that. Hollywood accounting. From the statements made, it will take Final Fantasy XVI 18 months to hit expected sales. I use the stock market as an example, but actual ROI should be higher than the stock market. Yeah, because why go to the hassle and the expense of greenlighting a game when you literally can just dump that money into the stock market and make more money and not have to deal with all the bullshit that comes from developing a game and all the people and all the headaches and all the things that can go wrong. The sales figures required aren't wild expectations. The number of copies sold were too low. And my numbers are actually much lower than realities. Game dev costs are probably 2 times as high. Marketing is also probably 2 times as high. And this makes the return on investment requirements higher too. People don't understand how this shit works. However much money you think you have to make to recoup costs on a project, you should just friggin' double it. And these games cost so much. This is why Warner Brothers, it wasn't just they got hosed on Suicide Squad. Like, they lost their freaking shirt on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League because they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this game. God knows how much on marketing. And on average, they have 400 or 500 people playing it on Steam. Like, and this is why I think we're going to see a pivot to AA titles and indie titles, because these companies cannot afford to keep losing massive amounts of money like this. They said this isn't even the core of the problem. This is just me proving that expectations aren't set immodestly, because all the gamers are like, well, they just have unrealistic expectations. They just want them to sell like life. There's not even that many consoles. Like, yeah, why would you say, hey, we're going to make this game Sony exclusive, and there aren't even enough interested parties that have a PS5 to recoup the cost of this game? I thought it was freaking stupid. I'm like, I don't know why you guys are Sony exclusive. I don't know how that works, how much money Sony threw at them or whatever. But they said, yeah, total audience growth was a reasonable expectation in the 2015 to 2022 era and still is today. Not only had the industry grown significantly, but there were new generations coming of age. They were coming of age as gamers, meaning that your total addressable population should be increasing, and you should be increasing your revenue. What's happened? Not just to Square-Enix, but to the industry as a whole. Audience behavioral patterns are radically different than expected in 2015. Remember, 2015 was pre-Fortnite. The way it used to work was that you'd pick your release date similar to Hollywood, stick to it, and consider the competition to be the titles releasing the weeks before and after. So again, people are playing older games. We would look at a Hitman or a Deus Ex release and consider whether there was a Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed coming out around that same time. Assuming that gamers had X amount of money to spend in Y amount of time, so if we wanted to get full sticker price, we had to release it then. At that time, as a gamer, once you finished the most recent game, you moved on to the next one. You're looking for your next title once you finish the prior one. They said the world has radically changed in the last 6 years. It has. Earlier this month, Kotaku had an article called 9 Great Games We Can't Stop Thinking About. There's a surprise 10th slide, and that's Fortnite. Yeah, everybody's playing old games. We've talked about this. He's basically saying because people are playing old games, the old games are competing with the new releases. People would rather play Fortnite. They'd rather play Minecraft. And I'm going to say part of it, and I'm not speaking to Square-Enix, but a lot of it is these AAA titles are not worth the amount of money that they're asking gamers for, and they keep infusing the games with DEI drama, DEI talking points, which causes drama on social media, and it's just not worth it. People are like, I'd rather just go play a game from 10 years ago that I know is going to be good. It's finished. It's, whatever. They said the assumption was back then that people would jump between products when they were finished. But as you know, games like Fortnite or Warzone are evergreen. They never get old. This is why I think they were putting more into Final Fantasy XIV, which, makes sense. I'm like, I can't believe this game is still around, but why create a new engine, right? You can just keep adding to the same game. They're always updating with new content and experiences. Candy Crush Saga, he's talking about. So, this is really interesting. He said, I expect Fortnite, Roblox, Warzone, and similar products to continue to grow revenue. Meanwhile, put yourself in an older gamer's shoes. If you're a gamer with disposable income but less free time, and you have the choice of paying $70 to play 100 hours in Final Fantasy XVI or just continue playing Fortnite with your friends for free, you'll wait to see the Final Fantasy XVI reviews before you decide whether or not to switch off of Fortnite. In other words, your switching costs, how good a game is, how exciting it needs to be, are now substantially higher than when you finish the last Assassin's Creed. So this is the reason we see trends where games are either spectacular 10 out of 10 successes or disasters with little in between. And he said, yeah, kids today aren't even thinking about Final Fantasy. Like, they're barely thinking about Kingdom Hearts other than to ship it. This is the same kind of a thing that's going on in Hollywood right now. They just massively miscalculated where the audience is, and it takes them years to course correct because the games and the movies take years to put out. But it's a pretty interesting read if you go out to Twitter, read this guy's thread. There's a lot more to it, but he's basically saying, yeah, we're competing with old games. And we greenlit these games in like 2015, 2016, and everything was different. And they're not going to greenlight more of these AAA titles now because they're going to lose their shirts on them. And this is why you're getting Kingdom Hearts on Steam like ASAP, because these games are done. They can dump them on the Steam and they can make a quick buck because they have to. They are dying. So go out to Indiegogo, support Shadowbinders 1, 2, and 3. Please subscribe for more content, and we'll talk later.